everyone, and welcome to We Watch Bad Films, the podcast where we watch bad films so you don't have to. With me this week is Jay.
Hello.
So, Jay, what shall we watch today?
Well, Gary, and obviously I've got a huge list of absolute steaming poos that we need to watch, but I think because I've been watching and you've been watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think it's time that we broach the subject of the sequel trilogy by Disney for Star Wars.
Okay. And I presume that means you want to start with Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
TFA! Yeah.
TMI.
We might as well start there.
Well, quite often I say, oh, that sounds interesting. Who's it by? But we know it's by J.J. Abrams. And all the rest of it. So I think let's play in the trailer of The Force Awakens and then let's have a chat about it.
Who are you?
I'm no one.
I was raised to do one thing, but I've got nothing to fight for.
Nothing will stand in our way. I will finish what you started.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it. The dark side. A Jedi.
Force. It's calling to you. Just let it in.
So you just listened to the trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens from 2015. Does that seem recent or does it seem a long time ago? I can't decide. Ostensibly, the plot is following Rey, an orphan on a desert planet of Jakku, who, through various shenanigans, gets embroiled in a plot with Finn, a deserted stormtrooper, and together they race from cutscene to cutscene, bumping into Han Solo and Princess Leia and C-3PO with a red arm and R2-D2 and Kylo Ren, who is the grandson of Darth Vader. It's apparent that she is Force sensitive and could potentially be a Jedi. Kylo Ren doesn't like this idea. His boss Snoke doesn't like it. Meanwhile, the First Order, or the Empire by a different name, has been raised, led by Hux and Snoke. They build a Starkiller base that attempts to kill things. Plot is foiled. This is all about a wild goose chase on the search for Luke Skywalker. Much of the film is spent trying to chase Luke Skywalker down and figure out where he's hidden. And the very last few minutes of the film are spent showing that they found Luke Skywalker and it is left on a cliffhanger. I did not think about that précis at all before I started. And I think it came out okay. Anyway. Jay, where do we start with The Force Awakens?
We start with hype. There was a lot of hype for this.
You're not wrong.
I mean, yeah, but not as much hype as Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I think people have learnt their lesson to be much more cautious about new Star Wars property.
Yeah. I mean, it set all kinds of records when The Force Awakens came out, despite what you just said. All sorts of facts, which I shall drop in here at a later date.
Well, what was exciting about The Force Awakens is the idea that possibly the original cast, the characters, would come together, because at the time, more or less everyone was around and up for doing it.
Yes, and so there was a lot of hype about, we could see Leia and Luke and Han all together again. I mean, the big three.
Yeah. So to me, that was exciting. I can't talk for the whole population who went to go and see it, what they were expecting, but that's what I was hoping for.
I guess before we get stuck in, it's called We Watch Bad Films, the name of the show. I thought I'd tell you that. And before we talk too much about what we thought about it, I think it's worth trying for this particular film to just talk about this particular film at the moment. Let's not get into The Last Jedi. Let's not get into The Rise of Skywalker. Let's just talk about this film in isolation.
So what you're saying is, and listeners, what are we saying? Because we're doing a podcast called We Watch Bad Films, and we're deciding to talk about The Force Awakens, is it a bad film? What do you think, Gary?
It's not awful. And I'm trying to put myself back into how I felt when I watched it. So here's two states of mind I can distinctly remember. At first, I heard J.J. Abrams was going to direct it, and I went, okay, I like J.J. Abrams, but his problem is, and I think it bore it out, was that he does really flashy, fun, technically successful set pieces from thing to thing that have no core running through them, and therefore you leave the cinema, and much like a very poor fast food meal, an hour later you're left thinking, did I eat just now? And that's what his film's like. You go back and think, did I just watch something? What was it? Explain how they got from scene A to scene B, and you won't have a clue. And even when I was doing my little précis a minute ago, I had to stop and think, why did they go from scene A to scene B? I can't remember, but the characters were running very fast. So that was my first thought about J.J. Abrams. And my first thought when I heard he was in the helm, I thought, oh no, he's the Star Trek guy. And he's done interesting kind of stuff with Star Trek, but it is flashy, showy, and then gone. It melts away like a communion wafer. Don't know where that came from. Meanwhile, you've got him then taking Star Wars, and again he sort of takes it on, and afterwards you're left feeling of like, okay, so how was that?
I had goodwill towards The Force Awakens, and I think when I watched it I basically enjoyed it, but it was like going to McDonald's or other fast food outlets. And exactly what you're saying, it's like stuffing my face with lots of goodies, but then feeling a bit sick afterwards. It wasn't much to it, but it wasn't terrible. So the reason we've chosen to do this film is because we're going to hopefully do the next two films, which we're not talking about now, but I think the ire will be saved for later films. So listeners, I think Gary and I decided basically that this is not a bad film. It's certainly not as bad as it could have been, but it's nowhere near as good as it should have been. And J.J. Abrams is I agree, he's a competent director, but I mean, he's not a Martin Scorsese. He's not even Spielberg, who he gets compared to all the time. Yeah, he looks like Spielberg. His visuals look like Spielberg, and some of his films have the feel of Spielberg. But oh my God, can you imagine J.J. Abrams doing Saving Private Ryan or Schindler's List? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, you don't even have to reach to that. I mean, he can't make Jaws. Again, his films don't have a solid heart. They feel like they're all spectacle, all sizzle and no steak. And that's probably my biggest criticism of this.
Yeah.
Is that it is flashy and showy, and I can distinctly remember thinking afterwards, okay, so, and the common criticism is, which I'm going to run along with for now, he just remade A New Hope. I'm okay with that. Just depends what happens next.
Yeah, you see, The Force Awakens is always going to get a certain amount of leeway because it's the opening chapter. And the opening chapter, all you have to do is set up the characters, set up the scene. But you don't have to really pay off anything because it's the opening gambit. Where it really gets meaty is the second and third one. But having said that, you know, so we both agree that it's not a bad film, but let's pick it apart as we are doing a podcast about bad films. So where did it go wrong, Gary?
Where does it go wrong? I think there's a couple of decisions are made for the sake of having something to do, which is kind of what I was just saying. You know, it's just let's move from thing to thing. Why does Kylo Ren have to kill Han Solo? Why? Yeah. Jumping right to the end. But why does he have to do that? He says, I don't know. I don't know if I have the strength to do it. But it's not like when Luke is goaded by the Emperor to kill his father. You can see that will turn him to the dark side. Kylo's already at the dark side. So what does killing his father achieve? His father isn't standing in the way, other than literally. He isn't standing in the way of him doing something or preventing him from doing something.
Yeah, and also by killing Han Solo, by killing his father, it makes Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, completely irredeemable. Yes, okay. There's lots of spoilers here, everyone, by the way. It's a bit late for us to say that, but there's spoilers for the whole saga. So if you haven't seen any Star Wars film, go and watch them first.
Hello and welcome to I've Never Seen Star Wars.
But, I mean, Darth Vader does lots of atrocious things, aka Anakin Skywalker. But he is redeemable at the end in as much as he brings balance back to the Force. In Return of the Jedi, he takes the ultimate evil villain, who is the Emperor, and kills him, and sort of redeems himself, at least to his own child, Luke Skywalker. But we know that he's basically a broken man. But he has redeemed himself through to his son, and he has killed the main villain. Now, for Kylo Ren to kill his own dad, and who is also the beloved character of Han Solo, for me, this character of Kylo Ren, well, then he can't come back from that, I'm afraid. So for me, that the whole arc of Kylo Ren is already spoiled for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I do want to jump the other way though and say, however, Adam Driver, as in everything, is really great. You know, he's got a great sulky face. He plays it straight as a bat, and really, I do believe him, even though what he's saying is odd.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Adam Driver's the best actor in the film, and I think Kylo Ren is probably the most interesting character, even though I'm not on board with his character arc, but the way he behaves is interesting. If you ignore the fact that he kills Han Solo, I think he's an interesting character.
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, we're not going to other films, but he continues to be an interesting character through the rest of the trilogy. But having gone to the back, let's go back to the front. So, I mean, it's hard to pick holes in things and say, why did they do that? But it patently doesn't make sense. It's unsatisfying to just suddenly create the Empire again. So if J.J. was going, can I be bothered to think of a new thing? Let's just do the Empire again, but call it the First Order.
Yes, this is it. Here we go.
Why not show the First Order rising to power? You know, make the first film about a very sudden rise of this evil force. You know, what might be interesting is perhaps flipping rebellion and empire on its head. So you have, the mighty Galactic Republic. Can't quite recall what they're called in them. What the goodies are called in the modern films, and then have the First Order rise as an insurrection and gain power very quickly. I don't know, but it's just all of a sudden we're dropped into the universe. Yeah, basically the Empire never went away, and it's fine.
Yeah, and we're talking 30 years since Return of the Jedi, since the fall of the original Empire. So what have they been doing for 30 years? And why all of a sudden they just appear fully formed with loads of recruits, loads of ships? Yeah, obviously it's now Disney property and they can fill out those gaps with loads of TV shows, but that's not the point.
No, it's not the point.
We had the original trilogy for about 25 years with no other filler apart from maybe books and stuff, but the actual official films had no explanation in between. It just all sort of made sense. But you can't have now 6 films and then jump in with your new 7th film with all this these unexplained characters. I mean, who's Kylo Ren? How did he get to be part of the dark side? We find out a bit later, but we don't find out in detail. Who are the First Order? I mean, who's Snoke? I mean, for God's sake, who is Snoke?
Yeah, I can kind of be okay with that, because again, you've got to assume it pays off in a later film. But crucially, we just never see this rise of the First Order, but Leia is still in charge of basically the rebellion, and it's just dumped on your lap as if, like, I can't be bothered to make up my own stories. Again, I'll just do A New Hope. Here you go. This is exactly where we came in A New Hope. Exactly.
Yeah, missed opportunity. And also, we don't get the reunion that I was hoping for. So Han Solo dies at the end. We do get one scene with him and Leia, but we don't get Luke. We don't even get Luke speaking in the whole film. He appears right at the end. So, and there's no Lando. There's no reunion of the. I mean, if the original trilogy is what people love about Star Wars, can I just state that fact? Okay, despite what Disney want you to think, the original trilogy and those characters are why people love Star Wars. So to have the original characters and the original actors at your beck and call, and to decide not to have them in scenes together to get the band back together is an absolute catastrophic missed opportunity. And then unfortunately, Carrie Fisher dies, and so you will never get the band back together. So, oh my God, that is the one thing that I cannot forgive The Force Awakens for.
But it was irrelevant because they'd already killed off Han Solo.
Exactly.
So they couldn't even have planned it for the second or third film because they'd already killed Han Solo. And I don't know why you wouldn't just play that. You know, why send Rey to do that? Why not manufacture some way? So let me be quite clear. A new trilogy needs new heroes, and the central trio of Rey, of Finn, of Poe, good trio. You know, there's some good characters in there, could do interesting things with them. But you, as Star Wars fans, and you're going to put those old characters in there, you want the payoff of them just riding into battle one more time or something like that.
Yes, you do, because it's the Skywalker saga, and none of the new characters are Skywalkers. Certainly in The Force Awakens, that's what we think. And so where are the Skywalkers? I mean, there's Leia, but she's barely in it. And also Finn and Rey, who sound like two sort of aquatic animals, they appear and they have good chemistry together. We don't really know anything about their backstory, which is okay for The Force Awakens, but as we get into the next few films, we realize that is actually a problem. But Poe Dameron, he's barely in it, and he's kind of two-dimensional. He later in other films gets more to say and do, but we don't really. I don't know. I don't really understand what Rey and Finn's point are. That it's not clear at the beginning. There's too much setting up in The Force Awakens and not enough payoff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of okay, as we said. You can kind of get away with it, but because of the other two films. But you're setting up quite interesting characters that we then don't see really get much done. And I'm really trying hard not to talk about other films, but Finn, for example, has a really interesting scene where and as a writer and a director and a filmmaker, you have to do this. Doesn't happen by accident. They put the most iconic lightsaber in his hand. Was Anakin's, was Luke's. They put it in his hand, and he fights that stormtrooper known as Traitor, and does kind of okay for a bit. And you just think, you don't do that by accident and then not explore that further. Why did the filmmakers choose to give him a lightsaber duel? Well, it's not like Chewbacca does it, is it?
Well, now you've mentioned the lightsaber. Yes, that is also a massive plot question, and I can safely say it's not explained in subsequent films. Where does Luke Skywalker / Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber come from?
Maz says that's a story for another day.
Where'd you get that?
A good question. For another time.
That other day will be in some comic somewhere, I'm sure. But I really do not like this. If you're going to do it, then you put it in the same channel of media. That has to be dealt with in another movie.
Well, yeah, because otherwise we can just say that with every plot device in every film or every sequel. Where did you get that from? Oh, that's just a story for another day. Not in this film.
No, and it's also Star Wars does suffer from, we need to explain what every single thing is and does and comes from through its associated media. But there's a really big cipher, that lightsaber, really big.
It is. It's a big prop. It's a very important thing, a piece of property that goes from one character all the way through the saga, but then it disappears. I think we see it when Luke Skywalker gets his hand chopped off at Cloud City. Is that right?
Yes, that's the last we know of it, I believe. And it falls out of Cloud City.
Yeah, well, you need to have an opening where somehow someone finds the lightsaber and it appears in the opening crawl or the opening 2 minutes of the film so that we know that it's around. That's all you have to do. Not hard.
Yeah. Or even, I could even get with Rey discovering it on Jakku as a junker, a scavenger,
Exactly.
Somehow, that's okay that it just ends up in a junk pile somewhere and she scavenges it and goes, oh, this is interesting. Tries to take it to Unkar Plot to get valued.
A bit like the ring from the Lord of the Rings. It could have spoken to her. It could have said, it could have made, it could have been the actual thing that kicked the plot off. Gary, why don't we write our own Star Wars film? Get this J.J. Abrams out of the way. Although actually it was written by Lawrence Kasdan, but we won't talk about it.
Yeah, but we're about 7 years late.
Shall we discuss Lawrence Kasdan?
By all means.
So I think it was a good idea to get Lawrence Kasdan back, who wrote or co-wrote episode 5 and episode 6.
Yes.
But he writes this with his son.
Yes.
And the script is good. The words that people are saying are good. I think the story and the details are lacking.
Yes, I mean, yeah, but that again, that is kind of okay if the overall arc is fine.
I'm so desperate to talk about the other film.
And yet we're not.
The reason we're trying to talk about the other films is because so much is set up in The Force Awakens that is not explained. And sometimes they sort of say what Maz Kanata says, that's a story for another time. Or they just don't explain it at all. So you're waiting for the next chapters to explain why things are happening. So what you don't leave with is, in episode 4, A New Hope, there's basically a full story arc. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you kind of know what everyone is and what they're all doing and why it's happening. Whereas in The Force Awakens, there's so much that is grinding up. It's like grinding into gear, which is fine, but my God, you better pay it off in the next chapters. And they unfortunately don't.
No, let's be honest, they don't pay it off. But if I'm coming back to this film, Daisy Ridley and Rey herself, I think, are engaging characters. I think she's an interesting person. I think she makes. I was watching a couple of scenes where she does an awful lot with her face and her eyes. So doing some great work. Here's something that divides people. What do you think about the humour of Force Awakens?
I don't find it offensive. I think some of what was wrong about the prequel trilogy, certainly from the beginning, was the Poe-facedness of it all. Poe
Yeah.
Dameron faced, and sort of ridiculous because of that. So I think a little bit of levity is good. What do you think?
Now, I can't help but think when I'm watching this that it's owned by Disney, who of course also own Marvel. And whilst I'm not a Marvel aficionado, one of the things that grates on me is that wise, cracky, snappy, gotta have a joke in every scene type attitude, and that sort of like James Bond killing a villain throwaway line type to it. And the first part that jars with me is that opening scene where Poe Dameron's being interrogated by Kylo Ren on the planet, and he just suddenly breaks the tension with, "So who speaks first? You speak first, or I speak first?" And I just thought, it's just it immediately demolished your main villain, because the goodie was just giving him sass to his face, and Kylo just ignores it.
Well, yeah, but that is nowhere near as bad as the next film. Anyway, forgetting the next films, I actually thought I was quite interested in General Hux as a character to begin with. I thought, oh, okay, this guy, I don't know anything about him. He's quite young for like a non-imperial officer, but he's a good actor, Donald Gleason, and he has a certain kind of vindictive fire in his eyes. So I'm interested to see where this character goes as well. But he doesn't have very much to do. The real issue for me is Captain Phasma.
Okay.
Absolutely, completely wasted character. Pointless, nothing to do, not particularly active.
But Star Wars has a history of this, of characters that appear to be really interesting and really cool, and then absolutely nothing happens with. I mean, the big examples are Boba Fett, but then you've also got in other films Aurra Singh from The Phantom Menace, made out to be a huge deal. Turns out to be a background character in a pod race.
Yeah, but they keep getting it wrong, and then they keep trying to retcon everything. What they need to do is create an amazing character and then run with it. When The Force Awakens was announced, I remember them doing press junkets, and I remember watching the very first one where they brought out the new non-imperial dark side characters, and I was so excited. Adam Driver, great actor. Donald Gleason, great actor, and then what's her face from Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. You'll insert her name here.
Yes, I will, because I can't recall it. I think she's great. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I've seen her jogging in Hyde Park before. What's her name? Yeah.
That's
anyway, her.
Anthony Daniels here. You might remember me from such programs as Lego Star Wars Droid Tales or Star Wars Forces of Destiny. Gary and Jay were trying to remember the name Gwendolyn Christie. TTFN.
I was excited. I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to have like a female villain, and she's got a real personality, and she's so big, she's so physically commanding. It's like, that's a really interesting idea. And then I saw the design for her character. It's like, oh, she's like a silver stormtrooper. This is an interesting character trait, and she's going to be in a mask, so you can't really tell whether she's female or male. That's really interesting. She appears for about 5 minutes. She says a couple of grumpy lines, and then she sods off, and that's the end of it, really. She has no characterization. She has no story arc, and then you don't even see what happens to her at the end. It is pathetic.
Other than we know she was in charge of Finn because he says, "Oh, remember me?" and that's it.
Yeah, what a really well-rounded character that was.
Yeah. So what about the character of Finn then?
Well, John Boyega, he's a good actor. He's a really
He
good
is.
actor.
Yeah,
Um,
real talent, and I think we've yet to see the best of him.
I thought it was really exciting that the two of the main characters, the actors, were British, and I thought, oh wow, that's interesting. That's giving it a fresh slant. And actually, you'd never know that he was British because his accent is brilliant.
Yep.
He got a lot of flack at the beginning for being what we thought was a black stormtrooper, because in the Empire they were basically a bit Nazi and speciesist and racist, and you wouldn't have had many females or black or alien characters in the Empire. In The Force Awakens, the First Order seems to be a bit less discerning, and they have all types. They have women, they have people from different races. I didn't mind that at all. I thought, like, yeah, great. He's a great character, and in actual fact, I tell you what Star Wars does really well is trailers, and in the original trailer, which you would have plonked at the beginning, he just pops up, and it's really exciting, and like, who is this guy? And he has such potential. I think he's actually really good in the film, and I can feel the hate swelling in me now because the lack of payoff from the other films is horrifically bad. And John Boyega has gone on record as saying he was very, very disappointed with his character arc. Yet again, we're not going to talk about that yet.
Yeah, you are right.
What do you think about him? What do you think about him?
I mean, watching it again for this view, you think, oh, he's really interesting. And yes, he does a lot of the comedy stuff, but they could have kept it just him doing the comedy stuff because it kind of fits. And he also thinks he's great, and everyone else looks at him a bit like, you're not that good, you know. Hence, he says, oh, I'm kind of a big deal, and then Han Solo calls him Big Deal for the rest of the film, which is kind of funny. And that just sort of sums up his character. And yet there was clearly he had something big planned for him that perhaps never happened. Like I said, John Boyega's great. He's got a lightsaber in the poster for Force Awakens. So you don't just give any character a lightsaber.
No. But I mean, for all he does with it, he might as well have been holding a hairdryer. What do we think about Harrison Ford?
It's hard to separate the man from the actor from the character, isn't it? Because he's famously grumpy and tetchy and a little bit sort of sneering at Star Wars in general. He is great on screen because he's great in everything. So whenever he's on screen, you're probably having a good time, but you're also sort of thinking, he looks like he can't wait to get out of there as well. Get finished, you know, and get on with it. But
and yet,
you know,
he's obsessed with Indiana Jones. He would do Indiana Jones until he literally was on his deathbed. Whereas Han Solo, he couldn't wait to kill off the character. I don't really understand why.
He wanted to get rid of him in Empire, didn't he?
Yes. He almost was gotten rid of in Return of the Jedi. He's great on screen, and it was, you know, I remember watching it and thinking when he came on screen, oh god, there was an emotional resonance there. You know, it's a character from our childhood we haven't seen in 30 odd years. They do that thing in the trailer, Chewie, we're home. You know, it's like, yeah.
I mean, it is a good line. It is a good line.
Yeah. But then all the stuff where he's running through his new warehouse ship with a big squodgy octopus ball running behind him with a giant eye. That's like something out of Red Dwarf. That was
See, that is classic J.J. Abrams. We need an action scene here, so let's put one in. Why? Don't know. Need a Rathtar, please.
Yeah, and then a couple of different groups turn up who sort of are antagonizing Han Solo. Do we know who they are? No. Are they
Japanese
there for
and the Scottish, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, two different clans.
Yeah.
And do we know why they're there? No. Do they really have anything to do with the plot? No. Then they disappear, and then nothing is resolved. That whole middle section is a bit of a waste of Han Solo, and it's only redeemed.
We're saying the whole film is a waste of Han Solo, really.
Yes, it is a waste of Han Solo.
What bugs me is how he shoots Chewie's bowcaster, and he's really excited by it. And I'm thinking, come on, guys, you've been together like 40 years. How have you never used it?
Have you never seen his gun before? What are we? That was mental. That was mental. Wow. Have you just woken up from the coma?
You think you should have done this before?
Yeah, that made no sense whatsoever.
And how do we feel well about having a giant floating moon, but it's got to be bigger than the Death Star that can shoot planets? I mean, there's difficulties in there, but whatever.
Yeah, we've discussed that it's basically a New Hope redux, but yeah, it's just not effectual. At least the Death Star, it's a space station. It was built for a purpose, and it didn't just. I mean, I suppose it just blows up Alderaan out of nowhere, but Alderaan, we don't, at the time of A New Hope, we don't need to know what Alderaan is. It's just a planet. Whereas in The Force Awakens, Starkiller Base literally destroys the central Galactic Republic system that we should know about, we should care about, and yet we don't know about it. We don't know who these people are on this central system, and it's also confusing because, who's General Leia then? She's not. She's part of the Republic, but she's not. She's not on the Republic planet. Why have we got a Republic and General Leia's gang? It's confusing, and that was a wasted opportunity. If they wanted to blow up the Republic's central system, you need to set it up. Because I don't care. I don't care who those people are. It didn't have the impact I think they were going.
No, but it is incredibly lazy, and even Han sort of references it just to have another planet-killing thing. Could you not think of anything else? You've even got acres and acres of expanded universe material you could plug into if you wanted to. If you wanted to get another fresh idea that has not been seen on film. But no, let's just do the Death Star again.
Well, all they were doing, Gary, was following the master, George Lucas, who just redid his own storyline for Return of the Jedi. You know that Death Star that we blew up? Right, here's another one.
Well, it's like poetry. It rhymes, isn't it?
Again, it's like poetry. So if they rhyme,
Mm-hmm.
every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
Yes, it's a limerick.
It's like a limerick. It's got a dirty joke at the end.
What do we think about the effects?
So there was a conscious decision to go back to many physical effects, which, is a good idea. There are many times they use a physical effect where perhaps you would usually this time use a digital effect. But it's nice to have lots of physical robots, to have physical scenes, physical scenery. Contrast it with the prequel trilogy, which was CG overdose. Clearly, a brand new toy that wanted to be played with. Whereas now, in this film, you've got BB-8, a very good practical effect for 99% of the time. You've got people in rubber suits, which is absolutely fine. It fits, it works. So effects overall are good. Is there any you're calling out as not good?
No, not necessarily. I just, I liked the idea of practical effects. I don't think that practical effects are better than CGI. They are just different tools for different things. I think people get hung up about CGI is really bad, practical is really good. I think you just use the correct thing for whatever's best at the time. I think just these days people go overboard with digital effects. I've watched a couple of Marvel films in the last few days. You don't like Marvel films. I'm ambivalent towards them. So I like some, I don't like others. But my word, they use so much dodgy CGI makes me feel a bit sick. So I'm glad they didn't go down that route, and it looks better for it. It's not as dated. What about the music?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think it's by John Williams, who I am. Shut up. Every single year, Spotify throws in my face, this is your most listened to artist of this year. Every single year since they started doing it, John Williams. So I find it hard to criticize, but the new themes he came up with for this film and series, I still listen to. Ray's theme, the scavenger theme, is excellent. The way it starts with bells is really interesting for him. And then you've got that riff, which is just irresistible. And then you've also got Kylo Ren's theme, which is so economical. I know you write songs from time to time, Jay. I bet you wish you could generate that kind of power with so few notes.
He's a great riff monster, John Williams.
Considering he's a classical composer, he can grab a tune really quickly.
Yeah, he's like a really overqualified sort of jingle writer. He just makes
he's
amazing...
advertising his loss.
Yeah. He should have done ringtones for Nokia back in the day. He's a genius at creating really economical, hummable, memorable leitmotifs, which is what I suppose he's doing. Wagnerian leitmotifs. Yeah, I know about music. Yeah. I will say, I do like the Wraith theme. I think it's very good. I think it's as good as any of the themes that he's done in the past. I don't think The Force Awakens or any of the subsequent films are his strongest Star Wars films. You may disagree with me there, but I didn't leave watching The Force Awakens humming that many tunes. The standout is the Rey theme, and it's a great one. But I do miss a big fat baddie tune. Just having the dee doo doo for Kylo Ren stroke the First Order is great, but I would have liked that to have been expanded on in subsequent films. But I'm nitpicking because it's John Williams, and really he can do whatever he likes. He could record a fart in a glass, and I would love it. So
he got his 50th Oscar nomination for this film. 50 nominations. I mean, the guy is just a machine. And I believe with episode 9, he composed his last film score. I think he said he's not going to do any more film scores. I'm happy to be proved wrong. I'd be more than happy if he churns out another dozen while he's still with us.
Didn't he write the theme tune to Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Well, yes, which is famously not a film. But he was then picked up. Oh, I forgot who did the rest of the music for Kenobi. But essentially, yes, he worked with them to help tease out the main theme for Kenobi.
Elton John.
Yeah, Elton John, that's it. John Williams and Elton John. One of my favourite collabs.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit funny. There's false feeling inside.
Breaking my ship.
Yes. So what else do we want to say about The Force Awakens? I mean, yeah.
I think we should wrap a bow on Force Awakens there, because there's plenty there. There's plenty there, good and bad, we've talked about. But I have to ask you, is it a bad film?
I think it is not a bad film. It's not a bad film. It's not a good film. This is all very subjective, isn't it? It's not a bad film. It's objectively not a bad film. Yeah. It's not as good as it should have been. It is, if it was just released as a random intellectual property called The Fight Beyond the Stars, I think we've reviewed that, I think. Yes. I think we would think, this is a pretty good rip-roaring sci-fi film, isn't it? But I'm afraid if you slap Star Wars on the front of it and you dredge up the old characters from the original trilogy, then you have a pedigree that you have to live up to. And I'm afraid it's not good enough. The Force Awakens is not good enough. So it's a good film, a fair to middling film, but it's not good enough.
I think it's also, as we've tried, it's hard to review on its own. It gets reviewed in the context of all three of them.
Which is not true for the original trilogy. Yeah, the original trilogy, it was part 1, 2, and 3, but they were enjoyable films with a certain amount of resolution at the end of each one. You can review each of the original Star Wars films on their own. You really struggle to do that with The Force Awakens. It is just like I said earlier, it's just cranking up the gears, and then that's it. You have to wait for the next chapter to understand anything, which is a failing, I think.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Well, I totally agree with you. It's not a good film. It's not a bad film, but it's weighed down by the expectation around it and weighed down by the legacy it carries with it.
Yes.
Well, that was very interesting. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter to tell us about how wrong we are about The Force Awakens, then please find us at We Watch Bad Films. Equally, Jay posts loads of his own doodles of this and other things at We Watch Bad Films. Feel free to get in touch with us either of those ways. I wonder what film we could be doing next. I don't know. I wonder what would follow this one. Anyway, thank you for joining us, Jay.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.